B'siyata d'shmaya, it's such a privilege to be able to sit with all of you and to share words of chizuk and clarity this Rosh Chodesh Av. Here we come to another Chodesh Av, another year, Mishenichnas Av Memat in B'simcha, that time period when we sit and we mourn and we reflect on the way things were and the way things will be, but much more apropos and more relevant and more relatable for our condition, how things could be, but somehow aren't. That way in which all of us are striving, yearning to come back to Yerushalayim, to come back to what Chazal describe as the inner dimension of Yerushalayim is Yerushalayim, Yira, in a more deep and relevant understanding, awe, to live with the awareness of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, to live lives of consciousness of our Creator, of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's love, of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence. And we come yet to another Chodesh Av, where that is the very real possibility that all of us are striving to manifest in our lives, that all of us are yearning to see manifest in our communities, in our nation, in the whole entire world. But we're not quite there yet. The Beis HaMikdash is still in a state of destruction and disgrace. Yerushalayim is shattered. That place that's supposed to be Yerushalayim Habenuya Ki Ir Shechubra Layachtav, the city of connection, the city, like we mentioned, of Yerushalayim, the city where it's clear, and it becomes clear to the whole world on its account that there's only one. There's only Echad Yachid Umiyucha, that every experience of life can be an experience of Yerushalayim, can be an experience of an encounter with the singular Creator whose spirit pervades all. That city that's meant to be the Chubra La Yachtav, the place of connectivity described by Chazal as the neck, expressed in Shir HaShirim. That's the connecting place between the mind and the heart, which is of course Shamayim and Aretz, which is the spiritual realm beyond and the physical, earthly, material realm that you and I are familiar with. That's what Yerushalayim is supposed to be. But it can only be that way if it's Yerushalayim Habenuya, if it's built up, if it's constructed in the way that we know that it ought to be constructed, in all of its angles and facets, in all of the ways that we yearn for it to be again constructed. Then it's Ki'ir Shechubra Lo Yachtav. Then it's the city that in a very deep way, if you look at the letters of Ki'ir Shechubra Lo Yachtav, we can actually see the letters of those words telling us a much deeper message. Ki'ir Shechubra can be read Ki'ir Shechubar Hey, and La can be read as the letters Le Hey. Ki'ir Shechubar Hey Le Hey Yachtav. We know that there are two Heys in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yud K, which, as we know, is Rosh Hashanah Yismechu Hashamayim, so that's a reference to the spiritual realm beyond, the aspect of the mind, the aspect of what's called in the Sifrei Kabbalah, Sifrei Machshava, the Moichin, that place of the clear master plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where His presence is obvious, pervades all. Yismechu Hashamayim, that's the first Hey in the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the name of Havaya, the name of all of existence. Ki Shechubar, Chubra is Chubar Hey. Yerushalayim is that city, is that energy that connects that first Hey of Yismechu Hashamayim. La Yachtav is Lehei. It connects that Hey, Yud and Hey, the first two letters of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, Lehei, to the final Hey of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, the Vav and then the Hey, which of course is Rosh Hashanah V'Sagel Ha'aretz, that aspect of the earth, concealment, physicality, where it's not clear all the time that Hashem is with us, where it's not abundantly clear that we're literally living within His breath, where we're swimming within Him, as we'll one day come to recognize when Yerushalayim Habenuya brings its light again to the world. Umala Aretz, Dea Ladas Hashem Kamayim Liyam Mechasim, where the world will be saturated with the awareness of Hashem, the consciousness of Hashem. Ha'aretz, the v'sagel ha'aretz, the physical realm will be saturated with the awareness that everything's being guided, with the awareness that there's so much more to life than meets the eye. Like water covers the ocean bed. And the tzaddikim explain why. Like water covers the ocean, fills that place of the ocean. Why is that the metaphor that's used? And the tzaddikim explain, because if you ever stop a fish and you ask it how the water is, it doesn't know what you're talking about. Because the fish has no idea. What do you mean water? Water is not a thing that the fish apprehends. It's not a thing the fish encounters. It is the sum total of the reality within which the fish is submerged, within which the fish is immersed, within which the fish lives every second of its life. And that's going to be the Great Awakening. That this idea of a Hashem, of a Shemayim all the way up there, a spiritual realm somewhere beyond, a creator that exists in some other realm, it's going to be clear that Ein Od Milvado doesn't just mean that there's no God other than him, but it means Ein Od Milvado. There's quite literally nothing but him. We've been swimming within him all along. He is the substance that makes up all of reality. He's here. Not just Yismechu HaShamayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the aspect of the heavens, the mind above. But v'sagel ha'aretz, that final hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei, is bound up, connected with, synonymous with the spiritual realm that we ordinarily understand as being in a different place. It's here. And that's what Yerushalayim HaBenuya is. Yerushalayim HaBenuya ki ir shechubra la yachdav, where the first hay is seen as being bound up with. There's an open channel with the final hay, which is our lived experience of reality. That's the aspect of the shleimus, the completion of what's described in the Chumash, in Sefer Devarim, as v'yadata hayoim, when we finally take all of what we understand in our minds about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and about how to live, and the wisdom of our tradition, that all of us are overflowing with these ideas. We're able to finally really bring it down into our hearts, so that we don't just talk the talk, but we can finally find the strength that it takes to implement these ways of living, so that we can know joy, so that we can spread that joy to the world. That's what all of us are longing for. And so we come to another Chodesh Av, and it's so heartbreaking, especially after the year that we've had. Mishenichnas Av mematen besimcha. What a time. And so, on the one hand, I personally hope to have so many more joyous occasions to be able to address you, to be able to learn with all of you, to be able to learn from all of you. But on this particular occasion, I'd like to take the remainder of the time to read you something that I found to be incredibly, incredibly evocative and moving. And, as you might imagine, it comes from that great realm of literature that we refer to as Holocaust literature, that ordinarily it comes this time of year, and that's where we turn. That's where we turn to stir up those feelings that sometimes are really difficult to access in our world and our reality that's so often lends itself to numbness and externality. So when we want to break into those emotions, we turn toward this kind of literature that helps us feel the gullus. But the passages that I'm going to read to you now are among the most unique within that entire body of literature, at least that I've been exposed to. Essentially what it is an accounting that's given by an anonymous survivor of Auschwitz, who wrote a number of books describing his experiences, and on the cover he only wrote the numbers that were tattooed onto his arm in pale blue, 135633. That's the moniker that he used in lieu of his name to write anonymously about his experiences in all of his books. But this one is unique among them, because in the year 1976, this particular survivor, this particular neshama, this special yid, sought a very unique kind of therapy to help him deal with 30 years of recurring nightmares that made it impossible for him to sleep at night. He would wake up drenched in sweat, the most horrible imagery, the most horrible physiological symptoms that were, of course, a result of his PTSD is not adequate to describe what these people were experiencing. And he sought a very unique kind of therapy that was unique then. Now it's becoming a little bit more common, and there's a ton of research that's being done in this space now, as I'm sure at least some of you are familiar with. But there is a kind of therapy that's making use of natural substances that are able to go to a very deep place in the person's psyche and give them access to memories, give them access to experiences, and somehow to help them heal if it's done in a responsible, proper, professional setting. And so in 1976, this particular survivor traveled to Switzerland to ingest some of this substance that opened up his mind and enabled him to revisit his experiences in a way that would help him heal, in a way that would help provide him with deeper insight into what the nature of those experiences was, to help him progress and to move on. And he had a number of different sessions, and what I'm going to read you now comes from the first of these sessions, and he printed this whole process in a very thin little book called Shiviti. From the pasuk Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Samid, Shiviti, a vision. And he just writes his number 135633. So I hope it's okay if I read you a little bit from this book, and then we'll speak just a little bit about it if we have time at the end. Let this be our doorway in, Chevra. Let this be our doorway into Chodesh Av, into helping us feel that on the one hand, everything's broken, and on the other hand, somehow everything's going precisely according to plan, in as much as you and I step up and really take our own efforts to the next level, to be the healing, to be the change, to be the connection that we wish to see in our fragmented world. So he begins like this. He says, I'm 4 years old. This is his vision that he's seeing after having taken this substance. Sitting with the other kids in Cheder, my eyes on the Rebbe at the head of the table. He glows as he bends over the Torah open in front of him, teaching us about the light of the 7 days of creation. His face keeps changing. One moment it looks the way it is stored in my memory, the next like the paper-shawled Jew in the magazine clipping over my desk. And he's describing this picture, which I'm sure many of you have seen, which he describes at length in the introduction. They'll shoot him in the back of the head once they've shot his picture. But before he falls among the dead lying on the ground, the horizon suddenly flared blue into otherworldly incandescences such as I've never seen in my life. Our Rebbe's payas are bouncing phosphorescence, while we little ones are translucent, ethereal, floating. If I choose, I could now fly away on those lights and spin off to the horizon, but I like it where I am across from the Rebbe. Amazing joy fills me, and I no longer need to fly to the lights on the horizon. They're right here with me. Yismuchu hashamayim v'sagel ha'aretz. I'm in them. The lights, as well as the horizon, hover above us, while our rabbi keeps chanting psukim from Bereshis. Vayichu lo hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzevam. And the heaven and the earth were finished, and all their hosts. And I, overwhelmed, see the words emerging from the Rebbe's mouth. I never knew it was possible to see words made of sound. The letters are coal black against white fire. And on the 7th day, Hashem finished all the work that he had been creating. Suddenly the lights go out. And I am more frightened than the other kids because I can touch the darkness. Darkness is in my mouth. I can taste it. I sense darkness on my palate as if it were a thing I put in my mouth. I can't see the Rebbe, but I know that he's there in his place and that he's within me. And I cry out, Rebbe, Rebbe, why? Why the darkness? Hush, hush. The Rebbe's voice rebounds from the darkness within me. There is a blackout. Why is there a blackout, Rebbe? Because there is a war between Adam, man, and the Nachash, and the serpent. Why is there a war, Rebbe? Because it was so decreed. Why was it so decreed? Who decreed, Rebbe? Who decreed? Ask God. Ask Hashem. Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. The tailgate hangs open. We hoist ourselves up onto the truck, which is here to deliver us to the crematorium. We know, of course we know, these trucks. We had seen them and known where they were going, their ceaseless back and forth, long before we were reduced to creatures whose will has been completely drained from their veins. Skeletons. Only this time it's our turn. It is the order of things on this planet, the black of night, the back of night, the face of day, and the trucks, and we, and Auschwitz, and within us the crematorium. Till your turn comes, it's nature's way here. This time I can already see what's in store for me, what's about to happen inside this truck. I already see myself curling up inside the coal bin, deep inside this giant truck, and hiding there. This time I know it all, I just don't know why. Rebbe, why? I clutch at the Rebbe of Shilov with both hands. At last you must admit, Rebbe, that the God of the exile, the God of the Gullus, himself is climbing into this truck. What did you say, my son? The Rebbe of Shilov looks up. Can't you see, my son, how even now Yaakov Avinu is wrestling with the angel, the Sar Shel Esau, for our redemption? Listen to this. Why we are the Gid Hanashe in this struggle. This is the vision that he's revisiting. We are the Gid Hanashe. Be strong, my son. This is the moment. You must be strong. For whom, Rebbe, does Yaakov Avinu struggle with the angel if his children are being carted off to the crematorium by the truckload? For whom, Rebbe? For whom? You and I in 2024 know the answer. For whom? Aros, out. Outside of the black Auschwitz is altogether different from the one I had known so well, as intimately as my own skeleton. The electrified barbed wire is magnified as under the eye of a microscope, 10,000 times its normal size. The light of this Auschwitz dawn has substance to it, and I can reach out and touch it with my hand, metallic, cobalt blue light. The same truck I had climbed up into that time feels different now. I see what I couldn't see then. Now as then I help the Rebbe of Shilov up, shielding his skull from the Kapo's club. But now the Rebbe is light as a feather. I have the feeling now that I could lift up this whole truck, together with all the skeletons in it, myself included. Suddenly I know what no one else around me knows, and I cry out, Rebbe, why? Because it was so decreed. Rebbe, who decreed? Who decreed, Rebbe? Ask Hashem. Ask God. I lift my eyes to the Auschwitz skies, and here we need to open our hearts and listen very deeply. I lift my eyes to the Auschwitz skies. Suspended against the horizon is the vision of Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Samid, like the one usually framed in front of the eyes of the Shliach Tzibur in Shul. But the Shiviti of our Shul looks quite different here against the sky of Auschwitz. Here it is a flame, like a torch, the glowing colors of the rainbow. But, and this is what is so extraordinary about it, its light shines only inward and upward. Auschwitz and its skies are as if they never existed, while the Shiviti fills the whole horizon from earth to heaven. V'sagela aretz yismuchu hashamayim, Yerushalayim habnuya ki ir shechubar hey lehei yachdav Shiviti Hashem lenegdi summit. The presence of Hashem, the awe of it is upon me. I stand in the truck, one in a mass of skeletons, stand there and stare at the letters Yud Ke Vav Ke glowing from within the pasuk Shiviti in otherworldly light. Then I stare at the twin lions, one to the left, one to the right, keeping watch between them over the sacred combination. Shiviti Hashem Legnegdi Summit. I have placed Hashem before me always. Here the lions' faces are human, and their wings are spread, and the letters Yud Ke Vav Ke intertwine, writhing one into the other, while I cry out, Hashem, Hashem, who decreed? Who decreed? Hashem, Hashem, Auschwitz. Whose is it? I tremble as I lift my eyes to see the face of God in his initials, Yud Ke Vav Ke, but what I see instead is the face of the SS man. Standing below the tailgate of the truck, unfinished sleep is still on his face, the dawn is cold, and he keeps both hands in the pockets of his great overcoat. He stands there watching the noiseless flow of a river of skeletons from the open gate of the barracks into the open maw of the truck, and his mouth opens wide in a long yawn. The same SS man, the same yawn, the same dawn, now, just like then, when I climbed up into the same truck, only now I can also see the Shiviti, which I did not see then. And I call out, Hashem, who created Auschwitz? All at once, an additional horror seizes me, once I had not yet known. If this is so, then he could have been standing here in my place, a naked skeleton in this truck, while I could have been standing there instead of him on just such a cold morning, doing my job, delivering him and millions like him to the crematorium. And like him, I too would yawn. Because like him, I'd certainly prefer snuggling under the covers of my warm bed on a cold morning like this. And would he watch me from within that moving truck as I am watching him now? And would he, the skeleton, think about me, the SS man, as I am thinking about him? O Lord, merciful and compassionate Lord, am I the one who's created Auschwitz? It's much worse than that. He, the German facing me with the death skull insignia on his cap, his hands deep in the pockets of his black SS coat, could have been in my place. It's that I, and this is the paralyzing horror, I could have been in his place. O Lord, Lord of Auschwitz heavens, illuminate my ignorance of your handiwork so that I might know who is the being within me now being delivered to the crematorium, and why. And who is the being within him delivering me to the crematorium? And why? For you know that at this moment of two of us, dispatcher and dispatched, are equal sons of man, both created by you in your image. And here we end this segment. The truck passes through the gate of Auschwitz, above which are the German words, Arbeit macht frei. Work makes free. And as I look up, I see them transmuted into the Hebrew words, B'Tselem Elokim bara osam. In the image of God, he created them. There's so much here. And when I first read this, I cried and cried and cried and cried. There's so much here. But the one thing that I want to leave all of you with and leave myself with as we head into this month of Av, this month where paradoxically we can feel more than any other month that Hashem is our Abba, that Hashem is our Father. Because if the world is a mess, it's because he sent us here to clean it up in his name. If there's one thing that I want to take with me, and I want all of us to be able to take with us into this Chodesh Av, it's to realize that the fixing, just like the breaking, is in our hands. We're not inadequate and incapable of doing our part to fix the world. We're not asked to simply stand by and watch as forces well beyond our control seem to be dragging this whole universe over a cliff. We must not underestimate our Tselem Elokim, because choices, active choices, are the difference between the SS man standing by the truck and the skeletons that he was unloading. Choices are the difference between in the gate and outside the gate. Guarding that place of Auschwitz with the words emblazoned, B'Tselem Elokim Asosa. It was humans who created Auschwitz. And it is humans who are going to liberate the world in such a way that it will be completely inconceivable for such a thing, for any such thing, to ever be manifest, chas v'shalom, in this reality ever again. We are the connectors. The building of Yerushalayim, it starts here. And the utmost way that we can begin this work is to bind ourselves with the emunah that the city of Yerushalayim, that the land of Eretz Yisrael, Kol Hador Ba'aretz, Doim Mikamishi Yesh Le'elika, that land that's saturated with Hashem's presence, to bring that into our hearts and souls. Emunah. Poi Eshev, the pasuk says. Hashem says, I will dwell in this place, ki ivisia, because this is the place that I yearn for. This is the vision that HaKadosh Baruch Hu yearns for us to manifest in His world, in His name. B'Tselem Elokim, Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Samid. Poi Eshev. And the tzaddikim teach that this word Eshev is the Rosh Tevis of three words: Emunah, the Aleph. The Shin is Simcha, Sin, Shin, and the Beis is Bitachon. Emunah, Simcha, Bitachon. So Rabbi Nachman teaches, the pasuk says, Ki b'simcha seitzeu, not simply that there will be great joy when we get out of this gullus and the world is able to heal deeper. Ki b'simcha seitzeu. It's by bringing joy into our hearts and mamish letting go, letting God, leaning on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's master plan, bridging heaven and earth, seeing heaven in earth and earth in heaven. Ki b'simcha seitzeu. That's our ticket out. And with this we can revisit those words of the Mishnah that we began with at the very, very, very beginning. Mishenichnas Av mimatin b'simcha, of course, literally, generally means that when the month of Av comes in, we lessen our joy. But of course, the great Hasidic masters, the Rebbes, taught us. I think the Chazim of Lublin, he read it differently. He said, Mishenichnas Av, when the month of Av comes in with all of its possible pain, damage, destruction, pirud, the opposite of chibur, fragmentation, duality, concealment of Hashem's presence, of the oneness of everything, of Hashem's master plan. Mishenichnas Av, we have a lot of work to do. Mima'atin, we have to do everything that we can to minimize the pain that's latent in this time period. And how do you do that? Mishenichnas Av mima'atin, how do we work to minimize the potential damaging energy of Av? And of course the answer is b'simcha, with joy. Of course it's not a kind of joy, we're not expected to be more joyous during this month than any other month. Obviously, the halachas require us to minimize experiences of pleasure, etc. But the joy of emunah, the joy of Yerushalayim, the joy of Yishav Hadas, of really reacting to the small little moments in our lives with the realization of Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Samid. With the simcha that brings into our hearts to know we're not alone, and this ship has a captain. Ki b'simcha seitzeu. That joy, that emunah, that Yerushalayim is the Yerushalayim habenuya, which is ki'ir shechubra lo yachdav, which starts to bring the v'yadata hayoim down into Vashivois Elvavecha. We should be zeicha to see the rebuilding within our own hearts and souls and within our nation and within the world of that realization, so that we can be a part of witnessing the great awakening that's described by the Navi in the words that we explained before. Umalla ha'aretz dea ladasas Hashem kamayim li'amachasim. We should see it with the binyan bayis shlishi. B'mehera b'yameinu. Amen va'amen. Thank you so much for listening.